It's expected to be a dramatic day in court tomorrow as former President Jacob Zuma is back in the dock for his long-standing corruption trial. It was postponed last week. Some background to the case now. The former president faces 16 charges relating to a multi-billion rand arms deal. Zuma is alleged to have received bribes from one of the winning bidders, French arms company Thales. We're expecting members of the hashtag Hands Off Msholozi group to start gathering in Pietermaritzburg for night vigil. ENCA anchor Tulas Sizwe-Simelane is there to set the scene for us. So, Tulas, of course, we've heard Jacob Zuma talk about having his day in court, yet he's trying to push for an acquittal. Are we likely to see a showdown tomorrow or not?
Showdown is the perfect word, Shahan, in terms of what will be happening inside courtroom A here at the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. We can briefly show you what it's looking like at the moment. Not much activity in terms of what's happening inside the court at the moment, but by tomorrow those corridors leading to courtroom A will be abuzz with activity as former President Jacob Zuma will be arriving for the arguments in his special plea. In a way, this matter, the matter is called State versus Zuma and another, but actually, in a manner of speaking, former President Zuma is turning it into a Zuma versus Downer matter. And here's what I'm talking about. There'll be a battle inside the courtroom there in courtroom A, but there's also a political showdown that is sort of building up, as you can see. We'll show you in a moment visuals from outside the court, just across the street, a park called Freedom Park. That's where you see that stage that is being set up for the supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, gathered under the hashtag Hands Off Msholozi support and solidarity campaign. They will be coming through, and they've said that they will be holding prayers starting from 6 p.m. today, and then tomorrow they will gather at a particular point and then march to that park that you see where that stage is being set up to show their support for former President Jacob Zuma. There will be, of course, much made of the political support that he receives from the actual structures of the ANC, the Provincial Executive Committee, but also other people, politicians, including, of course, will be watching whether the suspended ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule fulfills his promise to bring, quote-unquote, all of South Africa here. All of the Free State, he says, will be here. Those supporters dubbing tomorrow Msholozi Day. Let's see how it pans out. But in terms of why we are here, Shahan, we are here because former President Jacob Zuma has filed a plea in terms of Section 106(1)H, and we'll bring that up for you now and show it to you in summary before I speak to my guest, an attorney practicing in KwaZulu-Natal and in the High Court. So here's what it's looking like. Mr. Zuma's plea is in terms of Section 106(1)H, as I say, of the Criminal Procedure Act. Basically, he says he has a reasonable apprehension that Billy Downer, the prosecutor, lacks, quote-unquote, the independence and impartiality required for a lawful prosecution. He has filed an affidavit in support, that is Billy Downer, as per the arguments of former President Jacob Zuma, that Billy Downer filed an affidavit that had the effect of supporting the DA's case, and it describes the DA as a hostile party, a party that is hostile to him. So he wants him removed on the basis that the prosecutor has no title to prosecute, and then in the end there he says he is entitled to be acquitted if he is successful in that application. I'm joined by Ayanda Shazi, an attorney from Ayanda Shazi and Associates. Thank you for joining me, Ayanda. So, in terms of what this section provides for, just break it down for us. It's Section 1016, subsection 1, subsection H. But it's one of many pleas that are possible within that section. How does this come into play?
Basically, the section that the defense team of the former president is relying on is that the state does not have the fairness or the impartiality to actually lead this entire case against Jacob Zuma. How he's saying that is that he's stating that the prosecution is not only the state organization on its own, but they are focusing more on an individual, which is the right to prosecute, or he doesn't have a right to prosecute. because now when he writes this affidavit, he makes mention of other involvements of this prosecutor in other matters, which means that going forward, there's going to be an element of him being biased throughout the proceedings. And he has to be impartial in the utmost way in order for the court and also for the South Africa as a whole not to think that he has some sort of hidden agenda or he has an aim to just win, which is something that they also allege in the pleadings of the special plea, that he has he's not impartial, he's subject to influence of political parties, more especially the DA. Also, how he actually says that is that the DA was also behind the scenes when he actually drafted the affidavit, which actually prosecuted Jacob Zuma as well. Also, what they also mentioned in the special plea is that also with regards to the case of Sheikh, he was also involved in that matter. So that element of him being always there behind the scene when it comes to this particular application or applicants, there is an element of bias on him in dealing with this matter as a whole. And the prosecution has to have an element of not being biased at all throughout the proceeding. And
authority for that, before we turn to the court case that I want us to refer to briefly, the authority for that, they're drawing that from the National Prosecuting Authority Act, is it?
Yes, Section 32 of the National Prosecuting Act, where it states that the prosecutor needs to be impartial, must not act with favor, and must deal with the evidence as it is. So if he shows any element of him being influenced in any way, it raises that question mark. If in leading all the evidence, does he have another influence in dealing with this matter? Which then now the ex-president is now stating that he's not going to deal with the matter in accordance to what the evidence is before him. Even the evidence that he's raising, he's now putting doubts in how it was accumulated against him. He has one streamline of a win and not actually using the evidence before him in an impartial way and not being influenced by anyone.
So we're going to turn now to that part that I think will be quite central in the arguments tomorrow. Before I do that, Shahan, let me bring in and just show you what I'm talking about exactly. The key here tomorrow is likely to be in terms of what the law says at the moment about this question of whether or not a prosecutor has title to prosecute. And the reliance will be on the case that was decided by the Supreme Court of Appeal. It will turn to be pivotal in the arguments that you will hear tomorrow. It's a case called Porridge and another versus the National Director of Public Prosecutions. In a way, it sets the principles, Shahan, in that it talks about, the applicants in that case had been successful in an application similar to former President Jacob Zuma's application, Section 1061H, and the SCA then turned the High Court. In fact, I want to keep that graphic on there as I show it to you, Shahan, just in summary of what was found in that particular matter. The prosecutor's removal by the High Court, the court there in the Supreme Court of Appeal said the standard is different from the standard that is applied to judges, and actually said, quote unquote, it is inevitable that prosecutors will be partisan in a kind of legal system that we have in this country. And importantly, they talked about whether or not a person who is successful in terms of this application of this plea is entitled to be acquitted. The judges there not wanting to commit, but saying that it is doubtful whether a person is actually entitled to be acquitted once they are successful in removing a prosecutor. I understand.
That is very
this
much.
Has happened before in our court.
This has happened before in our courts. Funny enough, also in this case, the prosecutor in this case as well submitted affidavits in support of this, in support of the prosecution of this individual. In as much as they succeeded in getting the prosecutors, because there were two prosecutors involved in that matter, removed, but they were not successful in acquitting. I mean, in actually acquitting, in getting an acquittal, based on what you've just mentioned.
But how important would this judgment be? In that, it talks about we have an adversarial legal system.
Yes.
And I'm interested in the words, it is inevitable that prosecutors will be partisan.
Yes, that's correct. Because, as a prosecutor, you get more especially in a criminal matter. You get given a case and you have a victim that you need to represent. So it's a very thin line whereby when you are actually trying to put through the evidence to the court of this victim and not also seem like you're in the mud as well, trying to fight the battles of the victim. All you need to do is present the evidence and present it to the court, and the judge or the magistrate in that matter, they need to now, or the referee, and see now which story is more believable. You know, so that is why this case is very important with regards to this case, because that's the situation that's going to need to happen tomorrow. It's going to be an uphill for Zuma's defense to actually prove that Downey is impartial and that he's acting biased and he has influence. And based on all those allegations, can now the court then find that he can be acquitted? Because even the acquittal is another application on its own. It's not an automatic thing. Once it's decided whether he should be recused or not, the court still needs to decide whether he should be acquitted. And further evidence still needs to be provided by the defense team. It's not an automatic thing. That's correct. That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
And Shazi, I look forward to more of our conversations as you unpack and give us insights from your area of experience, your lived day-to-day reality being in the courts. So that's what we are looking forward to, Shahan. It will really be a point of law, so expect more of these rather technical arguments, unfortunately. We will do our best to simplify it as best as possible, but basically what we do expect tomorrow is that the whole day will be taken up by arguments in this plea that has been entered by former President Jacob Zuma. We will also get to hear the prosecution's response to it, what they say in response to all the matters that he has raised, saying that Billy Downer is no longer suitable to lead the prosecution.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one, and we, of course, will take those arguments live right here on ENCA.